Welcome again. This is Alpha Leak 3. We're going to be talking about Unichain. I'm going to bring them up in just a second. Welcome, Dave. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
And
Nice
I'm
to
going to
meet you.
bring Ken up as well.
Hey,
Welcome, Ken. How's it going?
good. How are you?
Yeah, really good. So I'm just going to run through a quick overview of Infinex for people that aren't familiar. And then I'm going to show a quick leak of an upcoming feature. And then we're going to dive into Unichain and UniV4. So if anyone has questions about Unichain or UniV4 for David or Ken, save them up in the chat or drop them now, because we'll probably go through questions at the end. So quick overview for everyone. What is Infinex? We're trying to accelerate the extinction of centralized exchanges. So we want to bring the UX that you get from Binance or something like Coinbase to a decentralized app. And the way we do that is by integrating other apps. So Unichain is one of our latest integrations you would have seen. And then I've got a leak here for an upcoming release. So this is actually, everyone's seen Switch, but this is actually a Bitcoin Switch, and it's going Bitcoin to Berachain. I think people would have seen screenshots of a Bitcoin swap before, except this is an actual like live video of someone doing a switch from Bitcoin straight into Berachain. And this is powered by near chain signatures. And then that's going to be releasing pretty soon. So stay tuned for it. I just got sent that video this morning. So, but that's what's coming soon. What did we just launch? We just launched Unichain. And what is Unichain? This is pretty interesting to me because it's definitely something that I'm not super familiar with, but massive fan of. I've been really excited for UniV4 when the docs were first released for that. And so I think it's Ken who's going to address the questions of like, what is Unichain and why did Uniswap, the sort of biggest DEX, decide to launch their own chain?
Yeah, dude, that's a great question. I mean, I guess maybe it was always fated in the stars, right? Daniel Lutzer wrote this post, Unichain is inevitable. Maybe it was. But no, it's Unichain is a generalized L2. And I think one of the really cool things that we can think about is, you know, as the super chain thesis plays out, or just like cross chain and interop plays out, I think it's important to have a venue where um, you have dedicated block space for DeFi, and it's an interesting thing to think about because for I think the kind of like the perfect space for V4 to live is where you have fully composable DeFi that lives as hooks on top of Uniswap, right? I think in the past, thinking about Uniswap as a DEX, just doesn't really apply in a V4 world. And I know, so we're talking about Unichain, but it's hard to, untangle the two. So in a world where, you have full composability, where a lending pool can tie directly into a liquidity position, you're really thinking about block space in the demand for block space in sort of like how available liquidity is to use. And so with a generalized L2, we're able to really think about how all of the pieces plug in together in a way that still continues to maintain the decentralization of the superchain and kind of really harness the speed of flash blocks, right? The ability to think about how we're, playing gas games with MEV rather than sort of just trying to amend the blockchain to capture it for applications. I think you have like a really great venue for priority gas fees to do more for all the apps on Unichain. And so it's sort of this like beautiful amalgamation of so many things coming together. And so I guess why Unichain, right? It just kind of makes sense, right? Like across other blockchains, DEXs really kind of sit to take up the most really the most demand for block space. And I think Hayden calls this out on a Bankless podcast where he calls dexes hoarders for chains.
Yeah.
Because it really does hoard block space, right? Like, when there are coins shooting off, when there's like times of high volatility, high volume, right? That is when gas spikes the most. And like, what's the point of keep jumping on an L2? It's because you want, more accessible block space for your users. You want people to be able to transact cheaply. And so what Unichain does is it's sort of in doing Flashbox, in kind of having these kind of upgrades to the trading experience. We've sort of inherently built the best venue for block space hoarding to exist, right? Because everything exists within this like more modular and composable system for Uniswap. So yeah, it is just sort of like a beautiful place for us to create a real liquidity venue, really a sandbox for DeFi to exist.
So I guess like that was going to be my next question is like, it seemed like before, I guess when I first heard about Unichain, I was worried that it's going to be this like fracturing even further of liquidity of like, there's another chain that can be swapped on. But I guess is the bet for Unichain that because it's the best chain for swapping because of hooks and UniV4 being there, that you're expecting, I guess, most of the Ethereum assets and most of the assets that are being swapped on Uniswap at the moment are going to be all those swaps are going to be happening on Unichain and then maybe being bridged back to be used. So I guess it's this like liquidity and DeFi hub for the rest of Ethereum to sit on.
I mean, it could be, right? I think it can be. It can definitely exist in that space. But I think the way that we think about Unichain is it sort of allows us to not really sit there as sort of like the sink for everything. I don't necessarily believe that like that's where we want to be. Honestly, sitting in this position for Unichain as an L2, as sort of this liquidity sink or sort of liquidity layer for other I guess like other chains to be able to access. Like you'll see in a lot of the research and the work that's being done on the protocol side for Uniswap is really around interop, right? Like the things we push forward with across, being able to have fulfilled orders in like a safe manner, I think it becomes more than sort of just like the place where people put liquidity. It sort of is a place where you're it's like a stop in the middle of the road, right? Like it's whenever you want to trade across another chain to another chain, you can use and leverage the liquidity that exists on Unichain for your users. And I think instead of thinking about this as this giant magnet for everything to come in here, it is a venue where people can go in and out of. It's a venue for liquidity to sit to ensure that you have the best price execution. It is a place where obviously like transactions can execute directly on, initialize directly on Unichain, but for other users on sitting on Base or other super chains, you can have deep liquidity. You can have access to the deep liquidity that sits on Unichain without necessarily needing to ever leave Base. The goal is really to push forward on interop and have this availability for, again, like I keep saying, composable DeFi, but inherently, as you're touching into a hooked pool, you get to leverage your hypothecation hooks, right? Instead of thinking of just like one LP, you have a lending pool hook where a lending protocol can have access to Uniswap LPs and vice versa, right? The hypothecation allows you to access deeper liquidity and allows you to kind of cut across. I guess in a way you're sort of like leapfrogging, right? You don't have to go through the bootstrapping. You don't have to figure out like will I get slipped to death on this chain? You can just use Uniswap across chains, and that's where Unichain sits. And I honestly think it's a much better position than to try to compete as this only magnet where only liquidity can sit here. I don't think that's the goal.
So I guess like for Infinex users, the way they should expect to start seeing hopefully a lot of the switch routing is going to be going through Unichain, and that's going to be the best pricing. But they don't necessarily, you don't see it as like a black hole that's trying to suck all the tokens off off all the other chains, I guess.
That's the alpha leak, man. You can do so much
Yeah.
more when you start, especially on Infinex, when you build more. The adding all the Legos together, you can build like a really robust strategy without ever needing to leave your chain.
And then how does the potentially spicy question, but how does the token, like the Uni token, actually fit in around like Unichain?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Unichain is going to be where late in the design phases, and we're kind of experimenting with how UVN exists. So it's the Unichain validation network. As we sort of built this out, the idea is, how do we create this ecosystem of validators and stakers to ensure that the L2 is properly decentralized, right? I think we're really making bounds with Flashbox, and a lot of the work on interop with OP and with Flashbots to kind of build all this out. I think one thing that was very clear is, how do we ensure that the CE is doing exactly what it's supposed to do? How do we make sure that Uniswap Labs running the sequencer they're doing what they're supposed to be doing? And so the Uni token will be used for stakers and validators to really kind of keep track of the network, right? Ensuring that the TE is building blocks as it says it's going to. It's ensuring that in the priority gas auctions, whoever bids the highest, wins that auction, right? It's ensuring ways for us to have fast finality without compromising decentralization. So the Uni token will play a critical role in maintaining that network. But yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun to see what's gonna happen when Uni is used in this way. I think you can think about incentives and just like, I guess, overall like revenue streams. You can start to imagine like new revenue streams coming about as extensions on top of UVN. Maybe that's an alpha leak. But I think in the white paper, it does say, there's a lot of things that are buildable on top of that. And so as a result of, I think, more interop, as a result of more DeFi sitting in Unichain as this like generalized L2, it doesn't have to be DeFi. Honestly, it could be a lot more than that. I would love to see like e-commerce sit as like a V4 hook, but that's an aside. It'd be really cool, right? If you could actually have that. But yeah, like all these things that exist, as more things start to kind of process transactions or execute transactions on Unichain, we want to make sure that the 65% of revenue that comes from all the transaction fees really does do something meaningful for the token holders. Yeah.
Awesome. I guess that's probably a good time to roll over into Uni v4. And I think maybe I'll start by wrapping up my basic understanding as is the big new feature seems to be hooks, which basically means that before a swap is executed, the DEX is able to sort of check for other information on chain, whether that's like checking for better pricing or checking with a lending protocol if it needs to liquidate or if there's an ARB available. And that means that you're going to get much better pricing, and also means that Uniswap can sort of automatically plug into other protocols. I'm sure that's a very oversimplified explanation, and David, you can probably give a much better one, but would love a quick run through of like, what's the big leap going over to V4?
Definitely. I think you touched on a lot of key points there. Taking a step back, I think there's several innovations in V4, and hooks is one of them. So like taking a higher level look, I think, the singleton architecture of all the tokens sit in one contract, flash accounting, where when swaps happen, you can have batched actions, you can have a lot of things going on in a single transaction. And even just for one swap, but many swaps, like it's much more gas efficient, not just because of the singleton, but also transient accounting, which exists within the singleton structure. Also, there's like custom accounting and hooks, which we can get into, but like overall, V4 is a complete re-architecture of the swapping system. It does come with a built-in concentrated liquidity curve that has the same tick math as V3, but you can eject from that as a developer. So it sort of leaves this like this last part that we want to talk about is hooks, which is this whole open-ended meta deck structure. So a lot more than just checking things before the swap. There's all these sort of touch points in the life cycle of a pool. So before and after you initialize a pool, you can donate to a pool, before and after swap, also adding and removing liquidity. So all these different ways people interact, developers can inject arbitrary solidity into each of those pieces of the puzzle. And what this means is that at a high level, every asset can have optimized liquidity pools now. So what does that mean? For different types of assets, you want different types of logic that exists in the pool to sort of optimize returns for LPs and reduce their risk. So a basic example is dynamic fees, which can be implemented, in hundreds of ways using arbitrary solidity. So, for example, if you had an ETH and ABC token, you could have different fees for depending on which way you're trading. So, if you're launching a meme coin and you want people to buy it at first, it could even be for the first period of the life of the token. It could have lower fees to buy than to sell. You could check the volatility in the market over the last period and change the fees. So if it's more volatile, you increase the dynamic fee so that LPs can capture more of the yield in these volatile periods, which can reduce their risk of IL and make things more stable as an LP. At the end of the day, there's also stablecoin pools, right? Where you might want to eject from that V3 curve and have more like a curve type stable swap curve inside the hook, right? So you can actually have basically build customized dexes that are custom suited for every asset that exists. Each hook can service multiple pools too. So if you have like an asset class that's suited for a specific type of pool, you don't have to have a different hook for each asset. Although certainly you can do this. It's basically like a wide open structure to create optimized liquidity, which, as an LP, you want to sit in a pool that's like customized for your needs, just because it makes better risk adjusted returns for you. And so the idea being this is how you create deep liquidity, which then leads to best price execution for traders. And so I think like the vision of V4 is to sort of, have these ability to customize any sort of logic you need for your assets. And I will say that V4 is not just about new innovations, it's about tapping into existing DeFi protocols and making them more capital efficient, improving the safety of their protocols, having better UX, and just, increasing, like Ken was saying about, lending and dexes coming together, you can really create some like interesting experiences that boost the yield for the users.
So I guess like really, I know I'm definitely oversimplifying it to a massive amount, but V4 should mean better, more flexible staking for people that are providing liquidity, like, and potentially better returns, and then also better pricing for people swapping, and then also a lot more flexibility around customizing a pool to an asset. So if you want a stable coin pool, or if you have an LST, like a staking token, you can have like special parameters for those swaps, because it might be pretty different swapping a meme coin. I definitely think it sounds interesting, the idea of adjusting the fees around a meme coin launch, whether it's having like a sell tax, I guess, or making it cheaper to buy if you're in first. Or I guess you could even do the opposite, to sort of like disincentivize snipers, have like a massive massive tax for the first couple of minutes until volatility drops or something like that.
Yeah, and there's also like you can prevent just-in-time liquidity. I think on Airdrome that's quite common where you'll see big trades come in and people LP in the active range. They capture the fees from the trade, they capture incentives, and then they leave the pool, leaving like long-term LPs sort of not in as good of a position because when you're passive, you don't play this active game, you don't capture as many fees, and you're also open to IL. So essentially, yes, like you can add these like types of rules where if you're an LP coming in, you can't just enter and exit. But again, it's all sorts of like you can customize the logic however you want as a developer.
Then in terms of, I know that there's like protocols building on Unichain or building on V4. Is there any particular teams or projects you've seen popping up building on top of, I guess, the new Uniswap innovations that you'd like to highlight or people should be looking at?
I don't know if there's specific projects to highlight. There's so many good ones, and a lot of them are coming soon. I think like when you think about building on V4, it is like a very complicated process and audits have to be involved. We really want to ensure that there's safety and security for users. And so I think what you'll see is over the next few months, a lot of really amazing new dexes will be coming out that are built on V4. These will tackle issues like fixed interest, MEV, new token issuance, um, LP, like rehypothecation, integration with existing DeFi protocols. And I actually think that like people are expecting new hooks that are like innovative, and those will come, that a lot of them are coming. But
Yeah.
I think what will surprise people is like hooks are really a tool for existing ecosystems to sort of improve protocols and bring different protocols together to work and compose things in interesting ways to bring more capital efficiency to existing DeFi protocols and ecosystems. Um, and it'll be a process. So, like lending protocols is a good topic. Ken mentioned them. You can have like a series of different steps that protocols can use to work with hooks to sort of bring more capital efficiency. And a basic one is rehypothecation. Another one is like using LP tokens as collateral, V4 LP tokens as collateral within a lending protocol. Um, you can use hooks for liquidations, and you can have any arbitrary logic that fits within whatever that protocol wants for their liquidation system. So you can have like curved llama type liquidation systems built. You could really like, break up the liquidations across different time periods. You could have different fees for the liquidators. All sorts of different structures can be built in. And then you could even go as far as building entire like novel lending protocols into hooks. But I think you've seen like there's been some really interesting innovations with Fluid where like they tie in lending and dexes together, and you'll see a lot of similar things happen with hooks where it's like a blank canvas and any lending protocol can now add this type of functionality using hooks versus like having a singular instance of that. I think you'll see a lot of different protocols tapping into dexes to sort of bring it closer to their protocols and like improve like the user experience by tying things natively together.
Yeah, amazing. I think that sort of covers our section. The main question I had from the audience was, yeah, like what's coming, which I think is a good answer for that. Next parts of the call, we're going to go over some like drama and like what's happened this week. David and Ken, you're welcome to join if you're keen to participate in that. But if not, you can jump off. So we've got our like trench report, what's been happening. I think that everyone knows that Kato was a massive launch this week. Kane missed out on the TGE because he was on a plane, and a bunch of the top KOLs sold. I'm just adding here that I've actually staked mine, so I'm a sucker. I'm going to be everyone else's exit liquidity. Then we had Consensus is happening at the moment. Kane was talking in Hong Kong. We had an awesome dinner. Did anyone from Uniswap go over to Consensus?
Not on our team, not at the foundation.
Fair. And then the other big thing that's been happening, everyone probably has been following along, is the Aptos GCR, who's been, this guy has just been shilling Aptos, saying that he's going to take over the entire chain. And he went from 300 followers to about 10K followers in the last week. I was actually going to have him dial in, except he did tell me that he's a little bit schizo and to spam his phone before the call, which I did do. And he sent me a message saying, hey, just let them know it's looking good here. That's all. So he's not going to dial in, but I got a message from him. And then the other interesting thing that's been happening is anyone that's been following Doge is that Trump and Elon have been saying that they might be doing a $5,000 airdrop to every American because of the savings, which is a percentage saving from the savings from Doge. So I think that will be pretty insane if we get get a country airdrop from government savings. We've got now for our Twitter raid, if everyone can, and I'm going to send this in the live stream. We've got this video from Mockabite, one of our community members, and he is actually edited himself climbing up this rock and posted on a bunch of bull run related and Infinex related tickers in there. So everyone should go and raid this Mockabite tweet. And if you are physically active and exercising a lot, then please film it and edit on some Infinex images. The next one I think is, and I'm interested to get some takes from David and Ken, is there was an interesting, and this has been talked about a lot with meme coins, is this idea of extraction from chains. And I think that this is the guy who makes DeFi Llama that don't know. He posted a big thread that was counting up all the money that's been taken off Solana, basically. And he said it's 3.6 to $6.6 billion. And I think this is interesting because I know a lot of people talk about, there was a lot of talk over whether Uniswap was better for Ethereum than it was for itself because a lot of the money goes to gas fees. And then it seems like the opposite thing seems to be happening on Solana, where the DEXs and the platforms are making all of the money and none of it's going to the chain, it's getting extracted. So I'm interested, do you guys think that if projects making a bunch of tokens running their business on a chain and then selling them, is that extractive, or do you think it's good for the chain?
I'll take this one. Look, I think, nobody wants to see this. Everyone wants to see each other win. And I think we're in a space where there's a lot of positive sum games to be played. It doesn't have to be first in, first out. That being said, I think there's some great lessons to learn when you get wrecked. I've been wrecked several times, and I think it's I honestly think it's an important part of the learning experiences. I believe in free markets, and bad stuff's going to happen. And I think people who are trading these markets, they get some exposure to the space. They'll see other people succeed and they'll say what happened? Why did I get wrecked while this person did really well? And I think a lot of people will dive deeper into the rabbit hole and hopefully learn more about self-custody, decentralization, and 3-3. So yeah.
3-3 is a banger line. Olympus was my first protocol that I was involved in, so that touches my heart, definitely. So now we've actually got our quiz. I'm going to share the quiz now. You guys are welcome to join David and Ken. There are going to be rewards for people that are consistently performing well on these. So I'm going to start sharing my tab in a second, guys. So just scan this code with your phone if you want to join. And I'll give everyone a couple of minutes. I think the live stream is a little bit delayed.
Should I be scanning the code if I want to play?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Early win. What is this positive sum game? What do we get?
All right.
I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to join. It was interesting. I'm like the first protocol I worked at was like part of Rari DAO sort of and Fei. And I was really obsessed with like lending markets. So I keep meaning to dive more into, I'm really interested to see how V4 changes lending, because I think that if you like you can sort of force people to take V3 positions concentrated, so they like have to be a buyer or something like that. I feel like see all the pieces there of how a new lending market's going to fit together. I haven't like really thought through how it's going to happen, but I just know that there's going to be some like new, really different lending markets that come out of V4. So pretty excited for that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like one thing that could be a lot of fun if you start thinking about like LPs, if there is, volume flowing through LPs, especially for when you think about like stable swaps, right? You're generating some, minimum threshold of yield that you can sort of imagine just from LP fees. And so in a world where you have a bunch of hooks, where you have essentially these LPs that are generating some baseline yield, you can sort of look at them as like bonds, right? You can look at them um, uh, like as actual like yield generating assets. And so when we take positions and we lend them out, it's kind of cool to think about what that actually means, right? When you have like a bond market, right, that's just native to DeFi, there's like so many new things that we can build on top of these hooks. Yeah, like what do credit swaps look like through hooks? It's pretty fucking sick.
There's a Cork protocol which is building peg default swaps. So, I think a lot of interesting new innovations that will be coming that will be very useful for holders of assets who, they might be worried like what happens if it depegs, and they just pay a little bit for insurance to cover it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You could even offer like rewards for people having bids for things. Something I thought about a lot is like if you want to participate in governance, you have to like place a bid and you have to have like a concentrated LP position. Like you're going to be the buyer if if the protocol goes badly, and that gives you a lot of like governance power. I think there's a lot of cool composability options that are going to come out of it.
I lost my browser's not working with the game anymore, so I can't win,
Wow, what a cop
unfortunately.
out.
I'm very competitive. I
Cop
like to
out.
win these little games, but yeah.
You don't want to know where Kane was speaking? Is there
All
is
of
there
the
a right
above.
answer for these? These are the first question was ETH is looking good here, but it said that was wrong. What
Oh
happened?
man,
that
that's
was
just
a trick question. You had to say patrons because it's the Infinex call.
I see, I see.
Okay.
Fair, fair. Um,
You should
I
answer it live,
actually
dude.
what? Oh, answer the
I'm kidding.
questions live?
No, I'm just kidding.
No
Just kidding.
pressure.
Damn, not
Not
Kane is
Kane.
winning.
Not Kane is crushing it. I don't know.
I'm
Very
suspicious of that.
suspicious. Yeah, very suspicious. If it's not patron vibes, something's really wrong with this question.
This surprised me a lot when we were doing the analytics on this. It was it wasn't what I expected.
Oh, it's general?
It's
Come on, that's
Chinese
boring.
general, not English
It's
general.
Chinese general.
Yeah,
Whoa.
it's something
I
that
just
I've been
wanna
like making a big effort to participate more in the Chinese community. And I'm sorry to English speakers who are definitely the ones listening to this call, but a lot of our most sophisticated and like interested community members are in the Chinese community. I feel like there's an element of like diving in and trying to make predictions on where the protocols are going and like understanding all the mechanics that I see a lot more in the Chinese channel than the English one, oddly enough. I think it's partly because they like have to discuss and decipher what the announcements mean rather than knowing right away. So there's a lot of like deciphering, and so there's this like really active discussion every time an announcement hits. But it's definitely it was eye-opening to me to find out they were like the most active Discord channel.
It's kind of dope, right? Like that's what we build DeFi for, right?
Yeah. This one should be easy, I think.
So what does the winner get again? I forget.
We tally up our scores over all of the weeks, because we do this every week, and then we're going to start dispensing out rewards for people that have performed well over time.
Nice.
I'm surprised so many people got this one wrong. I thought it was so obvious.
Oh,
Congrats to
snap.
Not
Kane.
Kane.
Not Kane. Very suspicious.
That sucks.
The
Yeah.
crying tiger.
Okay, I'm gonna
Are those
stop.
glasses or like what is the tiger wearing? I was very
Yeah,
confused by that.
the tiger had glasses on, which is pretty bizarre. That pretty much wraps up everything we need to talk about. If you guys want to shill anything to the Infinex community of how they can get more involved in Uniswap V4 or Unichain, obviously they should all do a switch to Unichain to test it out. Except, is there anything else that's like a call to action of how they can get more involved or what they should be looking out for on Unichain or for V4?
Yeah, I mean, so for Unichain, we have several grant programs live right now. We have the Infinite Hackathon. So if you've ever built a project at a hackathon leveraging Uniswap v4, or you're building some application on Unichain, you should apply for the Infinite Hackathon grant program or the retro grants. So any team with traction that's ready to put on Unichain, you tell us what the metric for traction is, and we'll work out a grant. It's kind of cool. It's sort of trying to reward builders for just experimenting. We want to see them continue growing, and it's not a ton of money. It's 2,500, 5,000, or 7,500. But the goal is that you have a little bit to cover your infrastructure costs, to cover some of your free time where you're building cool shit. Would love to see more privacy preserving hooks too. See, we have that, and if you want to just like ask what to do next, you want to do something on Unichain, you have no idea, we have a builder open call. Submit that form and just literally tell us. What else? Uniswap Foundation. If you're a delegate, vote on some shit. Read forum. UF is there.
I'll add on top of that, we have a lot of resources for developers building on hooks. There's a Uniswap hook incubator program where I've been really shocked at how senior and impressive some of the applicants have been through those cohorts. And there's another cohort coming up soon. We have rolling cohorts this year. There's also a self-paced course for people that want to just get going quickly and learn about hooks. We have audit subsidies for hook developers that build exciting, interesting, novel hooks. So we'll cover, if not all, the majority of the audit costs. And yeah, we just really want to make sure that builders are successful, whether it's Unichain or hooks. At this point, Uniswap is going from being a protocol to a platform. And so the success of Uniswap is the success of our builders, and they're first-class citizens. So if you're a builder, we'd love to work with you. We really want to support builders and make sure that they're successful. So
amazing. Thanks so much, guys. I guess we can wrap things up here. And thanks so much for joining. We'll post the recording probably tomorrow, and then we'll also post some clips and highlights as well.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Bye, guys.